During a heated primetime television interview aired live, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez launched a scathing personal attack on Hollywood legend Sylvester Stallone, clearly expecting an easy victory. But Stallone, the iconic actor who brought Rocky Balboa and John Rambo to life, did not back down. Instead, he delivered a devastating response that left AOC completely speechless and set the internet ablaze within. Minutes the television studio was unusually tense. Cameras tracked every movement. Producers whispered nervously through their headsets, and across America millions were glued to their screens watching CNN's newest special American dialogue, where public figures with opposing views faced off under dramatic red and blue lights. On a sleek black stage, two imposing chairs faced each other separated by a small glass table. AOC adjusted her microphone, a confident smile playing at her lips as she prepared to dismantle the aging action star. Her striking red blazer popped against the dark backdrop chosen to draw eyes across from her. Stallone sat calm, powerful, his weathered face unreadable, in a simple navy suit, without a tie, exuding the quiet certainty of a man with nothing to prove. The host opened the segment by framing it around veterans issues, introducing Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and Hollywood icon Sylvester Stallone, before turning to OC, who wasted no time launching into her attack with sharp indignation. She accused Stallone of hypocrisy, charging that he made hundreds of millions glamorizing war through violent pro-military films like Rambo, while never having served himself. Stallone's face remained largely still, though a subtle tighten around his eyes betrayed a flicker of emotion. Quickly reigned in. AOC went on accusing him of being part of a Hollywood machine that romanticizes war, leading young men to see combat as glorious rather than the brutal horror it is. She leaned forward, heightening her moral outrage, accusing Stallone of building his career off the very military-industrial complex that creates broken veterans while sending poor Americans to fight wars that enrich elites. Veterans in the studio audience exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered, "Is she really going there with Stallone right across from her?" "Just wait," came the reply. "She has no idea what's coming." Gaining steam, AOC slammed Stallone for recently criticizing progressive veteran care proposals while promoting his own foundation, questioning where his compassion had been during decades of pushing jingoistic propaganda that justified war. She turned on him with an almost smug look, saying his films, especially Rambo, helped cultivate a culture of militarism and dehumanize America's enemies, putting some of the blame for veterans suffering today on those like him who romanticize war. Even the host seemed rattled by her ferocity, and the studio fell into tense silence. OC pressed on, calling Stallone's Veterans Foundation a convenient tax write-off that provided good publicity. Without addressing the systemic problems facing veterans, she finished by telling him to reconsider how many young Americans were inspired by his movies to join the military, only come home broken, abandoned by the system. The host then gave Stallone the floor, asking if he'd like to respond to these deeply personal charges. All cameras zoomed, and would he explode? Would he storm off? Producers held their breath, hoping for explosive ratings. But Stallone remained perfectly still, hands on his knees. Then slowly removed his reading glasses, straightening in a subtle display of resolve. "Thank you for the opportunity to respond," he said, his gravelly voice echoing through the silent studio. He looked directly at OC and began by saying he understood why attacking his films might seem like an easy political win. But before she continued, he had something she needed to hear. When AOC tried to cut in, Stallone raised his hand, gently asking, "Please." And even she fell silent, waiting for what was next. Uncharacteristically yielding the floor, something in his tone, not angry, not offensive, but carrying a weight of unspoken knowledge, commanded the entire room to listen. "You came here today to score political points by attacking my character and my work." Stallone said, his voice measured but intense. "But while you've been giving speeches about veterans, I spent the last 7 years working directly with them, not for publicity, not for cameras, but because they needed someone who would actually listen." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on AOC. "And what I've learned from them, Congresswoman, might surprise you." The audience erupted into whispers, wondering what Stallone was about to reveal. "May I share something with you?" Stallone asked, reaching into his jacket. The host nodded, sensing a powerful moment about to unfold. "Congresswoman accused me of exploiting veterans." Stallone continued as he opened a worn leather notebook. "But I'd like you to meet Mike." The studio screens lit up with the image of a young man in a wheelchair wearing a crisp military uniform despite the obvious loss of both legs. Marine, 2 tours in Afghanistan. "When I met him 3 years ago, he had been waiting 9 months for his first VA appointment." Gasps rippled through the studio, and AOC's confident look tightened. "Mike told me something I'll never forget." Stallone went on. He said, Mr. Stallone, your Rambo movies didn't make me join the Marines, but they helped me feel seen when I came home, and nobody wanted to look at my wheelchair. The camera found Mike himself sitting in the audience, nodding solemnly with tears streaming down his face. You see, Congresswoman Stallone continued, while politicians debate theory, veterans like Mike live with reality, and their reality often contradicts the convenient narratives we create. AOC's self-assured expression wavered just slightly, and this is Sarah Army Sergeant Stallone said, showing another photo of a woman in dusty fatigues, her face carved with determination. She saved 3 soldiers during an ambush in Kandahar today. She works 2 jobs while still fighting for the benefits promised to her. The camera found Sarah in the audience, her chin high, though her eyes shone with emotion. Sarah told me the Rambo films didn't recruit me. Recruiters recruited me. Politicians sent me. But at least Rambo made some people care what happened to us when we came home. As Stallone shared story after story of veterans grappling with real struggles, the studio grew completely silent. His words weren't performative. They were raw, born of countless hours spent listening to veterans away from the glare of publicity. This is James Navy Corpsman Vietnam Stallone went on, his voice tinged with sorrow. He came home to protesters call him a baby killer today at 76. He's still fighting for the health care he was promised. The screen showed an elderly man, proud, yet worn by decades of struggle. James told me something that broke my heart, Stallone said. He said, your movies were the first time I felt like someone understood what we went through, not the fighting, the coming home part. The camera caught James in the audience, wiping tears from his weathered face. For the past 7 years, Stallone explained, I've been visiting VA hospitals and veteran centers across America, not for cameras, not for headlines, but to understand what they need. He looked squarely at AOC. And what's interesting, Congresswoman, is that in all those conversations, not one veteran blamed Hollywood movies for their problems. They blamed a system that makes promises it doesn't keep. AOC gripped her arm, rest her face, shifting with growing unease. As Stallone pressed on, you know what they told me they needed most? He asked, not revolutionary theories, not systemic reimagining. They needed someone to answer their phone calls. They needed their claims processed. They needed their medications approved. They needed rides to their appointments. He leaned back slightly, then reached into his jacket, again pulling out several folded papers. But the most surprising thing I've learned, Stallone said, comes from veterans in your own district. The host leaned forward, curious. What do you mean, Mr. Stallone? Last month, I visited the VFW in Queens. I do these visits without cameras, just to listen, Stallone said, and several veterans recognized me. They shared their stories, not about war, but about trying to help from their elected representatives. He carefully unfolded the papers. These are copies of letters veterans that are sent to your office, letters that have gone unanswered while you've been giving speeches about how much you care about veterans. Gasps filled the studio, and camera operators quickly focused on AOC as her expression turned from confidence to visible concern. That's not possible. AOC stammered. My office responds to all constituent concerns. We have systems specifically for veteran outreach. Stallone placed the letters gently on the table. Between them, Maria Vasquez, your constituent from Queens, her husband served in Iraq, suffered a traumatic brain injury. She's written to your office 7 times about his denied benefits. She's still waiting for more. Then an automated email. The camera found Maria in the audience, nodding solemnly, tears in her eyes. Stallone went on, she told me my husband protected this country, but no one protected him. Now I've called my congresswoman's office so many times they know my voice, but nothing happens. He picked up another letter. Robert Johnson, Marine Corps veteran from your district. He's been waiting 2 years for a decision on his disability claim. He contacted your office 4 times. The last time your staff told him to check the website. The camera found Robert, a middle-aged man with a prosthetic hand, who nodded grimly. Robert told me I didn't need a website. I needed someone to call the VA and find out why my file's been under review for 26 months while I can barely pay my rent. The audience sat in stunned silence, and perhaps most troubling, Stallone continued, his voice now carrying an edge of controlled anger, was Michael Williams, a Navy veteran who, when he reached out about a benefits appeal, was transferred by your office 4 times and eventually directed to a website. The same week you posted 6 tweets about veteran care reform. The camera found Michael, an elderly African-American man who stood proudly wearing his Navy cap, tears streaming down his face. He told me, I serve this country face to face. Is it too much to ask for the same respect in return? AOC's face drained of color. Her usual confident demeanor completely evaporated. You accuse me of exploiting veterans, Congresswoman Stallone said quietly, But these men and women in your own district feel exploited by something far worse, by empty promises from politicians who use their suffering as talking points, but won't take the time to help them navigate the broken system you claim to want to fix. For 15 excruciating seconds, one of Congress's most vocal members found herself completely speechless on live television. The silence was deafening, broken only by a veteran in the audience who whispered loud enough for microphones to catch he's telling the truth. When AOC finally spoke, her voice had lost its usual confident cadence. "I wasn't aware of these specific constituent cases. My staff handles thousands. With respect," Stallone interrupted firmly. "These aren't specific cases. This is a pattern. These veterans don't need revolutionary theories. They need their calls. Return their appointments, schedule the benefits they've earned through their sacrifice." He gestured toward the audience. "Ask the veterans in this room what they need most. Ask them if they care more about grand visions for systemic change or about getting their disability claims processed before they lose their homes to loan." Then stood and addressed the veterans directly. "How many of you feel that what you need most is a revolutionary reimagining of the entire system?" Not a single hand went up. The visual impact was stunning. "Now, how many of you simply need the current system to fulfill its promises to process claims, promptly provide quality health care, and offer support you were guaranteed when you signed up to serve?" Every veteran hand in the room shot up. Many stood as they raised their hands, creating a powerful visual testimony. The cameras panned across the audience, capturing the moment as a control room producer whispered, "Stay with this shot. This is incredible television, you see." Congresswoman Stallone said as he sat back down, "You came here to attack me personally, to score political points by suggesting I've exploited veterans. But the veterans I've met, including those in your district, don't feel exploited by my movies. They feel exploited by a political system that uses their suffering for speeches, but can't be bothered to return their phone calls on social media. Hashtags like Stallone's Veteran Truth and AOC Exposed began trending within minutes. Twitter lit up with comments from veterans sharing similar experiences. Facebook groups devoted to veteran issues were flooded with the clip, generating hundreds of thousands of shares in the first hour alone. A retired Marine watching from Nebraska wiped tears from his eyes. Finally, he whispered to his wife, "Someone is actually calling out the hypocrisy in living rooms across America." Veterans and their families watched, many seeing their own struggles reflected in the stories Stallone shared in VFW halls. And American Legion post groups gathered around televisions, nodding in solemn agreement. Stallone looked directly at AOC Congresswoman. "I didn't come here to embarrass you. I came because veterans deserve better than to be used as political props. While their actual needs go unaddressed." The studio fell completely silent. AOC's face had lost its earlier smugness. For perhaps the first time in her political career, the outspoken Congresswoman seemed genuinely affected. Politicians on both sides of failed hour. Veteran Stallone continued, "This isn't about left versus right. It's about right versus wrong." These veterans upheld their end of the bargain. America must uphold hers. The camera caught a veteran in the audience wiping tears as he nodded. "You can attack my films all you want," Stallone said, his voice carrying a quiet power that filled the studio. "But while you've been talking about helping veterans, I've actually been sitting with them, listening to them and doing what I can to help them, including those in your district who couldn't get a response from their own representative." In living rooms across America, viewers stared in stunned silence, some wiping